all my life I've been asking really dumb questions, and they've usually turned into really interesting problems that have been solved, and they've changed the way people think. So it turns out that this title is a bit of a mystery to people. So what I'm going to explain is why we might even need a truth engine, what a truth engine is, and then I'm going to detail how we can build one. And I moved into, I think I have 38 years in BT and 20 years of my own company. I'm moving into academia, and I'm finding interesting things like nobody fails a PhD anymore. Most of the PhD topics are trivial, and I think we should be tackling really interesting and difficult stuff. And every single PhD I want to start needs a team. It's all multidisciplinary, and it's difficult. This is difficult, and I've been tickling away at the problem for some time. So I'm going to start off with an explanation of what this is really about. We're in a post-truth world. We are inundated by stuff that we can't decide whether it's true or not. We can't decide whether it's important or what it is. But this is the landscape, and everybody's got an opinion, and everybody's opinion could be heard, and it's all very valid. And so actually now in the West, being intelligent, knowing stuff, being educated is something apparently not to be proud of, and it's something that's very often derided. And this is quite alarming, because this is where it leads. The end point for what we've actually started is disaster. And so I'm interested in what we do about this.
There's not a lot of negativity in there, is there, really?
That's the point. And so this is the situation. So Obama was not an habitual liar, but what has been made, a judgment call has been made on the discrepancies, the untruths, and all politicians have a difficult time. They're trying to present a situation, but the statistics are really interesting. In the first 10 months, Trump told nearly 6 times as many falsehoods as Obama did in his entire presidency. Now, the difference between the two, very interesting, because I don't believe this guy was trying to massage the situation. But I've got a little text over here, I'm going to use my finger. This is where we are. So the leader of the free world has actually set a new standard, and he's actually given carte blanche for a lot of people now to do the same thing. We have a pandemic of lies in politics, media, and business, and it's really kind of alarming. Society can't run on this. Lies will just lead to a demise. So this is a good example where in the United States, the most accurate sources of reporting are discounted in favor of the worst, the very worst sources of reporting. And there's this cult. And so my first illustration is this.
There is much we can do to bring our nation together. For example, those engaged in the political arena must stop treating political opponents as being morally defective.
This guy's a liar.
She is a liar. Lying Ted Cruz.
Crooked Hillary. She's a nasty person.
He's a nasty guy.
He's a nasty guy. Nobody likes him.
Crazy Bernie. He's crazy as a bit, bub.
That's, to me, that's just astonishing. And what's really worrying is a very large percentage of the American public going with this, and so suddenly this sort of behavior is acceptable, and it's now cropping up in not just leaders of nations, but in banking, politicians, managers, activists, media. This is not good, and it's not going to lead to a good path. So now let's have a look at the enemy without. The enemy within, these are people that we would normally trust, but the enemy without is out there doing interesting stuff. This is not a series of made-up claims. These have been stated openly, and you can go look for them. And it starts like this. You talk about a 20-year period, something like that, and you start to re-educate a new generation. You question their values, you get them to think differently, you get them to perceive things in a different way. Then over a period of about 2 to 5 years, you start to target with fake news and bad information and false claims, and you start to destabilize a society. And that's followed by a crisis. Something like a 6-week period, you get a disruption of everything. The power structure falls down, nobody believes anything, and nobody can make any sense of what is happening. And at the peak of this, you physically move in and take over. So this is a battle plan. This is a different kind of warfare. This is an information warfare in a different way to people thinking of security. Everywhere I go, when I see people talking about cyber security, they're thinking about things like virus protection and firewalls. This is a different kind of cyber war. And it's only possible because we've got IT in every desk, every home. And this is the landscape of liars. It's huge. And this is just a small list, just a very small list of the aspects. So this is the stuff that I think is really, really very worrying. I'm watching it every day, I'm seeing it on my screen, and I'm seeing the impact. The nature of truth is tricky. It's not an easy thing to decide what a truth is. Truth is not solid, but there are many techniques. One of the techniques is to say, I'm a great businessman. I'm a great businessman. Now, if you say it enough times, people will remember that you're a great businessman. Even though you're not a great businessman, you'll convince them. So repeating lies really, really works very well. The other one is, if you concatenate a series of half-truths that make sense, it becomes a truth. So things that are not true, if you stick them together as a story, they become believable, they become plausible. But truth can be a certainty. An obvious truth, I will die. You will all die. And not until our science has gone much further might we defeat death. But right now, it's a racing certainty, we are all going to die. And so, truth can also be very dynamic, and it can be unbelievably uncertain. And so, we have to be careful. So,
we're entering an era in which our enemies can make it look like anyone is saying anything at any point in time, even if they would never say those things. So, for instance, they could have me say things like, I don't know, Killmonger was right, or Ben Carson is in the sunken place, or, how about this, simply, President Trump is a total and complete dipshit. Now, see, I would never say these things, at least not in a public address, but someone else would. Someone like Jordan Peele. This is a dangerous time. Moving forward, we need to be more vigilant with what we trust from the internet. It's a time when we need to rely on trusted news sources. It may sound basic, but how we move forward in the age of information is going to be the difference between whether we survive or whether we become some kind of fucked up dystopia. Thank you. Stay woke, bitches.
This is why I'm worried. Okay, so now you've got populations of largely uneducated people willing to look at anything and take it for granted that that is what Obama said. Not even asking the question, would he say it? Is this in character? Might it be spoofed? How could it be spoofed? They don't see this stuff. All they see is the end point. So I'm now really very careful about everything I look at and ask the question, is this likely to be true? And so this is getting really kind of difficult. It's not just the printed word, it's not just the spoken word, it's now movies and it's emails and it's text and it's advertising and it's everything else. Nothing is sacrosanct, nothing is secure. It can all be spoofed. This is compounded by this observation. This goes back a long, long time with Asimov. The people in the East are astonished at how proud the people are in the West to be totally ignorant. And how ignorant is just blows me away, but it's not very clever. So it seems to me that human ignorance is unbounded. The flat earthists are alive and well. They're denying all demonstrations that the globe is not flat. The snag is, it takes virtually no energy to believe a lie and dismiss wisdom. A truth takes a lot of effort and a lot of it. You have to think. And people don't want to do that. They want an easy life. And so if they lack the education, that's one thing. Truth's a very hard one. We have to spend thousands and thousands of hours deciding what is right. This is expensive. But we now have people that are not even willing to listen to anyone that's qualified or educated who may have spent those thousands of hours, and they're willing to go with the most stupid things. I mean, this one absolutely cracks me up. This is not just a few cranks. This is a very large population, a percentage of the population in the United States believed that the moon landings didn't happen. It was all a spoof. For what reason, I can't imagine. It's just quite incredible. But this is the stuff that's going on, and the internet is doing a great job of supporting it. But this is I'm just going to run a little bit of this. It's quite depressing.
You met someone from Amsterdam. What nationality would they be?
I have no idea. Amsterdamian.
Amsterdamian. No, they wear wooden shoes. Who wears wooden shoes?
Cobblers.
Cobblers? So they'd be cobblers. I'm good. All right. We're talking with
Lindsay Shanks.
Lindsay, you're a high school student as well.
Yes, sir.
What is the world's tallest mountain?
It's not Mount Rushmore.
No. Do you ever rest?
Do I what?
Ever rest? Yeah.
Oh. I really don't know.
See, I asked you, do you ever rest? And you said,
Oh, Mount Everest.
Everest. There you go.
There you go.
I'm running more swiftly.
June 24th was a grim day in Britain's ivory towers. The Brexit vote a punch on the nose for an intellectual elite who had lined up in favour of staying in the EU.
This will be a victory for ordinary people.
But did the referendum reveal, perhaps even cause, a lasting change in our relationship with the people we once believed knew best?
The Bank of England, the IFS, the IMF, the CBI, and most of the leaders of the trade unions in Britain in this country
At last, get a fair deal. I think the people in this country have had enough of experts
Okay? Enough said.
You're an expert, Peter.
Unfortunately. I don't actually considered mine an expert. I've always considered mine somebody who's all curious and just trying to find out what the truth is, what the reality is. So this is the big problem. We now have an internet that can instantaneously shoot stuff everywhere. It appears on your screen. You have no idea where it's come from. You don't know whether it's validity. And to figure that out takes an effort. You've actually got to do something. And for most people, it's just easier just to not think about it and just assume it's okay. And the other sad thing is they're now targeting this stuff to reinforce your prejudices. They don't put on your screen random stuff. They figure out your prejudices and they feed them. So you start to receive stuff that reinforces the way you think. So my wife has got a wonderful technique on Facebook, and she is friends with people she doesn't like, purposely, or disagrees with, purposely. Because what actually happens is you get sucked down a rabbit hole. You make friends with people like you. You join with people who think like you. And all of a sudden you're in a very cozy rabbit hole with all these people who discuss something and pat each other on the back and very reinforcing, and it's comfortable. If you get a few extremists in there, it's very uncomfortable. It makes you think and you realise just how difficult and different the world can be. So this is what is happening. We're getting social division. The UK, the US, split down the middle. That's starting to happen in Germany, in Italy, in France, and everywhere else by the same mechanism. In the United States, the most paranoid nation on the planet, I think it's become extreme. And I think it's become very, very dangerous. And so we have to worry about this. This has been repeated many, many times in many different guises, but it's true. A lie goes faster than anything else, by a long, long way. So these are my worries and concerns, and here are a few examples of really silly pieces of fake news. Pope Francis, God has instructed me to revise the 10 Commandments. Who comes up with this stuff? But people actually believe it. Because he's an authority figure. And there's just acres and acres and acres of it. So this is, I thought, a good observation. The real news has gotten more surreal and absurd. You can't tell the difference. The fake news is plausible, perhaps. And so the two are about the same. People can't make any decisions anymore. This speaks to the sort of Putin mantra. You just get people so confused that given any amount of information they can't decide or try to run what's happening and what isn't. And so ignorance and lies. This is the situation we're in. We're going towards the edge of some kind of terrible cliff. We're blindfolded, we're going over the edge because we can't see, we can't understand. This is the big worry. So I always look at society like this. It is an incredibly precarious balancing act. Right on the bottom right there, we've got all of our fundamental knowledge generation. It costs a lot of time and money. Thousands of years, hundreds of years, millions of people working hard, science discovery, all these fundamental truths, the stuff we understand. We've then got the technologists and the engineers who exploit this, and we do our damnedest to get things right. But what actually happens, we discover that some of this stuff's not quite right, and we feed back, and we sort of wind the clock round, and together we get a better and better picture, and so we can build bridges and motorways and vehicles and aircraft that actually hang together and work and are reliable. And some of it has taken us to kill a lot of our fellow men to actually get there, but now we've got computers that will model things so accurately, we don't have to set fire to aircraft to look at the way they burn, or drop mobile phones onto concrete to see how they break. We can model all that. And then we've got all of our industries and institutions in defence, all relying on this underpinning. And right at the top, we've got our government, our media, and our society.
Call that the top?
Say again?
I said you call that the top?
Well, I could put it up there. You could spin it upside down, but I think, you know, in a world that would be ideal, the people up here would be managing and feeding this stuff. These guys up here start to denude this layer of resources, the GDP or nosedive. You know, and people have this disconnectedness that says we've got to keep putting money into the NHS. You know, the NHS is the biggest thing, the best thing we've ever created. I do hope not. And if we don't generate the GDP, we do no such thing. But what is incredible is that actually the incidence of untruths, lies, errors goes up that way. We're so down here, we're absolutely busting our gut to get it right. And I don't know an engineer that doesn't worry about this, but when you design something as an engineer and a technologist, you always beat yourself up about what goes wrong, how does it fail, does it fail suddenly, does it fail gracefully, and if it does fail, does it hurt people? I don't know that the concerns up there are quite that visceral. There's another component here that I don't think people understand. They just love to work looking down a soda straw. I look at ecology, I look at commerce, I do security, I do defence. None of this stuff is isolated. It is now connected in a way that's never been connected before. There is no things here that are disconnected or exclusive. They're all connected. You can't twiddle with one without it impacting the whole. And I'm not sure that the managing of our society takes that into account. If you neglect education, you get a heck of a problem with policing and industry and employment and productivity and all of those things. And that's just one example. So the big question is, this is the punchline, what do we do about all of this? Are we just going to sit here and wait till we go off the hinge of the cliff, or are we going to grab hold of some stuff and do something because we can? For the gentleman at the back of the room taking photographs, I'm going to give you this presentation, I'm going to give all of you the presentation, and we'll get good quality pics. Okay. So this is the big question, and can we educate all the people to think that might be fundamentally impossible? I'm not sure people want to, and in a lot of cases I'm not sure people are capable of thinking some of this through. So I think we have to fight fire with fire, use the same technologies and techniques, but it has to be fully automated and it has to be on a global scale. This is actually the cybercrime problem, but on afterburners. And I think it's a bigger problem, and I think it's far more dangerous. Most people are not actually seeing it. So, filtering the web of non-validated content may be possible, but it's not risk-free. Well, this censorship I'm not in favour of. But we've got this dichotomy. I want freedom of everything, but with that comes responsibility that I don't think society can actually assume or step up to. And so, like everything else, there's going to be some things that we have to compromise on. So here are the countermeasures. Could we purge the web of all the errors? Could we flag the liars and the liars? Could we publish veracity ratings? Could we remove or attenuate at least the rogue users? We block and attenuate the extreme channels, identify, advertise regular persistent fake news, and so on. There's quite a long list of stuff.
What to me might be something really important to you is a lie.
And that's why it's difficult.
Exactly.
And that's why it's difficult. And that's why it cannot be in the hands of one person. This has to be, it has to be done democratically, but democracies don't exactly work very well. They're incredibly inefficient. So
how do you define truth and facts? So what's the difference between the truth and what's the difference between the facts?
Come to that very shortly. Okay. I mean, the fact is, when the sun goes down, it goes dark. The truth of the matter is, the sun will do that again tomorrow, and it will repeat that, and we know how long it's going to do it. And getting to that level of understanding has cost a lot. So this is a kind of list of stuff I think we should do, and if you disagree with me, I don't mind, because if I come here and you all agree with me, I've wasted my time. I am here to poke you with a stick, metaphorically.
I can't say that I disagree, but my first immediate reaction is that these countermeasures are inevitably obsolete, and the moment after they take over, because it continues.
So the missing word here is dynamic countermeasures. So I've made this observation many times on it in different spheres. So here's a sphere. If our networks don't live, and I mean live, as in life, they will die. And there are many aspects of what we're building as technology where it's got to dynamically evolve. This is another engineering worry. Engineers like to design stuff, you put something in, something comes out, and it does that every time. Almost none of our systems do that anymore. We can no longer predict what the systems are going to do. Everybody's got short nails, because you design a system, you let it loose, and it does its own thing. And a lot of the systems are now evolving. And we have no way of getting out of that. But let me just proceed a little more and take you down this line. And so here, for me, are the big questions for a truth engine. Can we reliably and accurately identify truths, half-truths, distortions, falsehoods, and lies? That's a PhD on its own. This is a really tough list of things. Can we establish some new framework and metrics? Probably. Can we make judgment calls fast enough? Don't know. It's hard, because I would like to flag a lie or an untruth in real time on my screen. Don't know if we can do that. Can we block or attenuate the pernicious? Don't know. Can we continuously clean the net? And can we educate society the risk? I don't think so. So,
you know, the question and the actual countermeasures that you were talking about.
Yeah.
How did you come to the point of saying these are the countermeasures that I want to do?
Let me get a few more slides in and I explain that. Okay. I have to say, this presentation caused me a lot of grief putting it together. It has been so hard. It's been so hard to actually string it together in a coherent way that I think would work. So I think we've got a very definite tick on that and that. I'm not sure about this one or this one. No clue about these last two. Don't know. This is part of the voyage of discovery.
The bottom one's got to be a huge cross, hasn't it?
Don't know. Don't know. I don't know what we do. So why truth engines? Well, I think it's vital for all of these topics and an awful lot more. I don't want to go to my doctor and he says, don't worry, you're okay. This cancer will go away. Just keep taking these aspirins, you'll be all right. No, I would like the truth from it. I don't want to hear from a politician, we're going to throw 20 billion at this and 40 billion at that, to find that in the period when that's supposed to happen, they've got no money and they slash the budget and all bets are off. I would like people to be honest and truthful. And this, so let me just give you an example. You know, this is one of my favorite examples. The planet it's flat, it's spheroid, it's flat, it's spheroid. It's an oblate spheroid. Actually, it's a dynamic oblate spheroid, and that's the best model we've got right now. That's the best model. But you know, the Europeans were looking at the world as being flat and considered to be flat thousands of years after the Egyptians had figured out it was actually a globe. And you only need a piece of string and a stick to figure out that it's a bit of sunshine, and you can figure out that the Earth is a globe. So here's the categorization of lies, and this is, I think, a reasonable list that will fit on one slide. And you know, 7 categories are about right. You may be able to cook up a few more. But this is a good ballpark start. And so what have we got? Well, all these experiments have been run. Some have been run by me, most have been run by other people. But the Bayesian inference engines are really very impressive. Simple AI does a really good job. In fact, at the moment, most AI, all it does is recognize patterns. Correlations, they work very well. What we don't have is trending analysis, and I'm going to explain what trending analysis is shortly. And we don't have overt lie recognition. We don't have a very good, reliable way of recognizing lies.
Yes, we do.
It wasn't me.
So yes, we do.
What is it?
No, that's my outright lie.
Okay. Good example. So the truth engine, is it possible to build one? We've got a tool set, and let's just ask a few questions. Is it mission critical? Well, I think without it, we're not going to survive as a species, period. We're not going to wipe ourselves out on the back of lies. Society will collapse. Goodness knows what will come out. But it's not going to be very pretty. How big is the problem? Does it look tractable? Might we crack it? I think so. And what do we have, and what do we have to develop? So as an engineer, my reaction to everything is, can I buy one? Has somebody else built one? I don't want to build anything if somebody else has done it. And it turns out that in this sphere, a lot of stuff's been built. Whoopee, because I don't want to build diddly squat. I'm very happy to get all the components and glue them together. But what I've managed to identify, some of the difficult stuff. So the story goes like this. What do we need? Well, we need an engine that will drag out context and meaning, and will infer something. So, a good example would be if you want a visit from the CIA or the police, just send an email and say, John, it was great last night. We blew New York to pieces. I think we should attack Chicago next week. That'll, of course, a knock on the door, but it could be referring to a party that was explosive, an event that was dynamite. And all these trigger words will get some kind of reaction because the systems are so crude. Extracting meaning from what people say, especially the English, who are delightfully ironic and sarcastic, means that the Americans can't even understand what we're saying when we're talking, because they're neither. But we are very subtle in the way that we will respond to things, and you have to understand the idiom to extract the true meaning in a conversation. Fact checkers are really interesting because they are relatively easy to make, but at the moment they employ an awful lot of human effort that needs to be replaced by AI. We've had one demonstration of Obama and his style. that was a very convincing demonstration. The intonation in the voice, the breaks, the phraseology, the momentary in there makes it all very, very plausible. And finally, trending analysis and veracity rating, which I happen to think is not there, and is more or less the prime focus of my study of what can be done. And I've done some early work on this. So this is the scorecard, context and meaning. This stuff is really quite well developed. Fact checking is on the way. Style and behaviors is okay, but it needs a lot of work. And there's nothing on trending analysis and veracity rating. So here are the 4 questions. Who's the author? Why did they publish? Who do they work for? What's their reputation? Are they paid, sponsored? Do they have a following? Do they cite trusted sources? Do they have relevant expertise? What is their purpose? Is the material current, outdated? What site is being used? These are sort of some of the core questions we ought to be asking when we see material. And can what they say be corroborated? Has it been fact-checked, correlated? What confidence do we have, and what is their history? And could we automate it all? Well, I think we can. So here's a good example, and it's quite alarming that when you see this huge explosion on social network, all this gibbering of activity about something, and then you dig back and you say, well, where were the primary sources and how many were they? And so you find out of millions and millions of pieces of communication, there are just a handful, like half a dozen sources. And from that, it's just exploded. And so you get this illusion that activity is related to truth. It's giving the idea of some level of veracity because the sheer number of people agreeing with it, when very often that's not even relevant. And so it's difficult for you and I to get our brains around the scale of this stuff. It's enormous. And a lot of the people who are not on social networks and they don't get involved in, just do not get the difference between the old world and the old media and what is actually happening there. And the fact that young people don't watch TV, they don't listen to BBC News, and they get their stuff from here. And so this is a different kind of world. And the errors and distortions are just enormous. So fact checking, is it easy to do? There are a lot of fact checkers out there. And when I started this, I was staggered to find that there are over 160 organizations on the planet who are dedicating their efforts to fact checking everything. And what is interesting is, where are they? Notice there's none in Russia. Why would you? But North America, Europe, a huge amount of the planet has got fact checkers. So my immediate reaction to this is, whoopee, there's 160. Can I aggregate that lot and have the fact of all fact checkers by aggregating everything in some weighted manner? And it's ripe for automation. And there's a couple here for you to try. They are really quite remarkable and really very powerful, but not many people use them. But we need to, and it wouldn't be hard to build them into a browser, so the browser automatically does a fact check and says, this is an unreliable source, this is not true. Or the likelihood, but still, the likelihood of this being true is only 25%, or it's 90% true. So I'd like fact checking running all the time on everything I look at, and it would help me. Another technique that's come out of Indiana University is to throw up on 2 axes, X and Y, a bunch of statements from a huge number of organizations, and then plot a line through it, and if you get some kind of line like this, and this is actually the truth line along here, anything close to this is more likely to be truthful than something that's way out here. So this is quite powerful. It can be automated. And they come out with sources weighted by reputation. The BBC at 95%, Bloomberg at 90%, and Fox News at 55%, and then Breitbart at 0.05. I mean, these are sort of, and Twitter at 0.01, 10%. So you say, right, this is good, I can throw a lot of these away, and they're not going to work. And then I've had a look at things like the Wikipedia and Encyclopedia Britannica. They're about 80% accurate. One of the things that's slightly depressing, but you have to think about this, is the academic journals are only about 45%. And this is not because people are lying, it's the rate of technological progress and the fact that truth is actually moving. You know, that's the problem is in these spheres, truth is a dynamic property, and we're grasping new concepts and ideas, and this is a tough call. But you know, to find that the BMGA is in this box is just kind of whoops. You know, these guys are going to open me up next week, and all sorts of things. But it's understandable. This is the leading edge. This is the best truth that we can establish. So it is a function of being dynamic. So another thing I want to build, or I would like, is a library of lies. Wonderful thing this would be, a library of lies. Let's get every...
We can help you with that.
So if we could get a recording of every known lie with every source and how did it propagate and all that good stuff, we would have a phenomenal resource. So that is something that doesn't exist, but people are working on it. People are working on it. And the snag is, there's not enough people working on it.
So I suggest you just insert an E after I, and then we have the library.
So
I like that. That was good.
There are huge libraries devoted to one man, but you know, it seems to be taking over the world of lies. So it looks like this, you know, if this could become a global effort and we could have not a Library of Congress, but a Library of Lies, how powerful this would be. And there are some implications, you know, human, legal, bureaucratic, that come into the frame. So the analysis is this, which is where I want to be. I want a truth test, I want a truth meter, I want something that will allow me to rank all sources of information so that I know by degree what the likelihood with time that the truth is of a source. And then I will be able to build an engine that says this statement that was just made by CNN is 77% likely to be true, with a plus or minus 5% error bar of 90%. That would make me deliriously happy. That's my target. That's where I want to get to. And so I need to do this right across the whole web, and I need to do it in real time. These are the big challenges. The scale is phenomenal, but it's not impossible. So I just picked this at random, but this is an example of sensationalism over truth. Just look at the headlines. 2,000 dead in atom horror, 2,000 dead riddle, nuclear nightmare. Somewhere in here it says there are so many dead, they're not putting them into graves, they're putting them into trenches that are having to be specially constructed because all the people are radioactive. Really? You know, I don't think so. So what actually happens is this. Fukushima 2,129 disaster-related deaths. 1,368 have been listed as related to the nuclear power plant. One worker is acknowledged to have died from radiation-induced illness. I mean, these guys are not just in error. Now, what is really upsetting about all of this? Given this truth, given this statistic, no effort by these guys and gals to retract or to correct, because they're not in the business of communicating the truth, they're in the business of selling newspapers. This did the job. And so this is quite a wheel, I think, that's fallen off. And so none of them, by the way, mentioned the 15,000 people that were killed by the wave. So let's say, why do populations of people have a job assessing risk? You know, this is the headline they get. This is what they don't see. But this, you know, if you were in Fukushima, you wouldn't be worried about a nuclear plant. You'd have been worried about this mountainous wave that was coming towards you, where there's no place to run. So there's a lot of cases like this, and every one that I've looked at, we've had this sort of, how would you call, mountains out of molehills. And again, the dynamics of it is that now you've got the interesting situation of people filming, broadcasting, going on the web, making comments, and so it's not the news media that are reporting, it's people on the spot that are reporting. Then this is getting interpreted and it's getting folded in. Amy Whitehouse, it's kind of interesting to read the sort of news that was pertaining to tell the truth about the way she died and all the other stuff. It was really quite distorted, and so you have to be really quite careful. So here's the mountain out of molehills case. This is all the stuff, you know, the news in the United States follows the following format. There's a drum roll, boom, 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 boom. Something's coming, boom, 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 boom. It's very nasty, boom, 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 boom. It's going to kill you, and there's nothing you can do about it. Every news broadcast does that. You know, and here are the numbers, 60,000 people are going to die. Crikey. So this is that kind of news feed. So you look at this, the SARS quarantine in China. 774 people died in 37 countries. Bird flu was going to wipe us all out. 10 people died. 65,000 people deaths from swine flu were predicted in the UK, 457 actual. Ebola outbreak, 11,000 deaths actual. These are quite alarming for the scale of their error. And it's just become the norm. Very low death numbers like vaccines and autism, zip, nothing, no proof. That was predicated on the basis of one scurrilous publication by someone who, at a scientific level, fiddled the results. Killer wasps, 42. Cell phones and tumours. People are trying so hard to prove that there's a problem with mobile phones and tumours. When people say to me, I put my mobile phone up to my ear and I can feel it warming my ear, I tell them to stop pressing so hard. So this is now the pattern. So we have a very dangerous political and media mantra. I find it quite alarming. People believing the least credible news source, and they don't like, this doesn't line up with their thoughts, so they eject all of that. And this is the reality. So I'm going to show you the cost of where I think this stuff goes and how we get it to work. So first of all, we look at news reports. And then we look at those news reports as they develop until they become stable. And then we can do something that's really interesting. We can say, what's the difference between the first and the last report? And were words used in the news report that go along the lines, local sources tell us the best estimate at this time, local estimates, all those kinds of provisos, or do they come in hard? 10,000 people have been killed. So we need, and I don't know how to do this, but we need to take a news report, follow its slope down, and then give it a weighting to say, actually, this news feed was a good one, and the same agency, we do it all the time, and we can get some kind of measure of how accurate they are. So the degree of lie tends to look like this. In the first instance, the error or the degree of lie tends to be quite high. But as reports come in 2, 3, 4, and the final report, they get more and more accurate. And so what intrigues me is, what's this distribution with time? And how accurate can we get it using all the tools I've described? And then, who are the people that are down here with massive errors? They don't correct anything, they do one report or a series of reports that are just there to sell newspapers or make ballyhoo, or they've got some political agenda. So this, to me, is a primary tool of trending the information to make a qualified estimator of how good these sources are. And so you have to watch out for Russia today. They are both good boys and bad boys at the same time. But they have some good content. So manual results, and this is painful because it's cost me a lot of time, is that the Washington Post comes out about the top. These guys, this is Woodward's operation, and they spend a huge amount of fact-checking. The BBC and the Economist are pretty good. Then you get Times, Reuters, and so on, New York Times, Wall Street Journal, and they're about this level. Now, these guys, I want to put all the information from these guys in an AI engine, weighted to say, this is the very best proposition, this is the very best truth that I can extract from all these sources, and I want to discount all the bad boys. So that is the fundamental thinking, and it's not going to be easy, but to me it does look possible. And so the ambition is to automate all this lot. A lot of it is really suited to the AI we already have. Remember, the AI that we already have is on the bottom rung of the AI ladder. It's extremely crude, but it will do this kind of a job. And so, taking into account all of these things at speed is beyond human being, and this is the only technology we have. And so, this is where we are right now. The context and meaning extractor is pretty solid. So is the inference engine, so are the primary sources identifier, and so are fact checkers. But the style, history, publication behavior are a lot weaker. We really don't have a very good library of lies, and we have nothing on trending analysis, and we have nothing on veracity rating. So building the machine this way, pretty solid over there, but we've got all of this stuff to build. So I'm actually in the business of trying to get some of this funded and get some PhD students on it and start doing this professionally. Here's something that was done by someone else. It was a brave effort to rank all of the news sources for bias and for their original reporting and their fact reporting. This caused absolute mayhem. No one would believe it, and it's actually worth diddly squat. And this is the dominant mode now. I'm right, you're wrong, and so you're an idiot, is the dominant mode. Whatever happened to the art of debate, tolerance, and thinking? So don't you say anything again. So, you know, that kind of attitude is fundamentally a disastrous road. I'm throwing this stuff up here to pitch, to get people to engage, to tell me why things won't work. Give me a clue. What should I be doing? How do we do this? I can't do this all on my own. But opinion now has little value. But for the vast majority of lay people who know nothing, the internet has empowered them to the point where on topics they know nothing about, they have a valid opinion. This is extremely dangerous, as has just been demonstrated by our government, and qualified analytics is now dismissed. Nobody's really willing to listen or to consider. So this is compounded by belief systems, and it's belief systems that span everything from religion to political diktat to a vision of the world, anything. The big problem with belief systems is it stops people thinking, and it is really damaging, and I think it's very, very dangerous. So this is one of my heroes, and I never ever got to meet Richard, unfortunately, but I did sit in a lot of his lectures when I was a student on 8mm film, and I was always stunned by two things. One, his complete inability to string together a grammatically correct sentence, whilst at the same time being one of the most brilliant communicators I ever sat in front of. And this is quite a quote. And so, what do we do?
One truth. That you are a slave, Neil. Like everyone else, you were born into bondage. Born into a prison that you cannot smell or taste or touch. A prison for your mind.
Now, if that seems far-fetched and crazy, go onto YouTube and have a look at China and have a look at their social program for getting people's behavior to align to an agreed norm. It involves cameras, it involves records of everything they do, what they buy. And if you go and buy wine, you get a negative. But if you go and buy fizzy water, you get a positive. And people are suddenly discovering that their social score means they can no longer get on a train and they can no longer fly. And so you steer an entire society of over 1 billion people and their behaviors by adjusting their reality. And so they have a choice. You take the red pill or do you take the blue pill? George Orwell would be so pleased with himself that he got all his predictions so accurate. And the thing that would totally stun him, one, he'd be pleased to see that we've all got cameras observing us all the time. What would shock him is that we buy the cameras and then get upset if nobody's watching us. A number of paradoxes. So there you go. Thank you. This is the ultimate test, but I don't know whether it works.
Obviously, thank you, Peter, so much. It was well up to the usual standards there. Obviously, questions?
Sir.
Do you have a list of critical items that they build on each other? Because you were talking about AI, you were talking about algorithms, and we know that's rubbish in, rubbish out. It's what is it based on? Because I know you said the truth engine, for example, is pretty solid at the moment.
Yeah.
And if you just can explain a little more on how do you rank them and
The truth answer is I don't know. I'm trying to figure that out. And one of the somebody years ago once asked me why I go to my office, and my response was to be interrupted. And even to this day, I go down to the local hotel to hide, and they just keep bringing coffee, and I keep working. Or when I'm on an airplane, people don't disturb me. But I need to sit in the corner with a wet towel around my head for about a week to try and come up with a coherent list. I'm not sure I'm capable of doing that on my own. I need a bunch of smart guys and gals in a room to debate this. Some of this needs moral philosophers. It needs sociologists. It needs people with understanding and skills that I don't possess. That's the reality. And because there are consequences to all of this. And so this is one of the difficulties, and it's one of the reasons that 99.99 professors in university are not going to tackle a topic like this, because it's too hard. You know, I'm so dumb, I don't know it's that hard. I'm so brazenly arrogant as an engineer that I think we can fix this. You know, one of the great qualities of engineering is phenomenally arrogant. You got a problem, we will fix it. You might not like the answer, but we will fix it. And I just think that this needs a team on it. And I'll be very happy to sit down and try and put a list together with half a dozen people. And I'll have a stab at it on my own. And I'm happy for people to pick it to pieces. But I've not come up with a satisfactory hierarchy, if you like. You know, I get these wonderful news sources that are sort of from like 98.5% downwards. What's the weighting going to be those in an AI engine that says, the answer is, I don't know. I'll let the AI figure that out, and it will figure that out by just chewing through tons and tons of information, and it will settle down at some weightings. And human beings can't do this stuff. So I wish I could answer you better than that, but I can't.
Can I just do one more question? I think it's time for afters.
Thank you, I thought that was absolutely fascinating. I've approached the same topic from a different direction, which I think you might find useful. And that is that, for example, I get the news feeds every day for the Office of National Statistics. Then I look at the different news sources and say, what have they made of it?
Yeah.
And the key thing there is that the different news sources you have there being accurate haven't said something inaccurate, but they've picked out from the statistics something that fits their view, their world story. And so you wouldn't say it was inaccurate, but it is giving a very biased view.
We're all guilty of it.
Yeah, but I think it's very important if you're saying where is the truth, to actually you've got to take account of that bias, which is going to persuade people one thing.
A lot of the truth is unhelpful. So what's actually going to happen is tomorrow I'll be posting this, it'll be yours to download. There will be other stuff on the topic, but what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to put a pile of business cards out. If you have a lasting interest in this topic, please link with me, because what actually happens, if you come up to me on LinkedIn, you'll get a continual feed of interesting stuff. Some will be on this, but I just feed all the time interesting and provocative stuff.
Is it stuff that you consider interesting, or stuff that we should consider interesting?
Well, it's stuff that I consider interesting, and the judgment is the number of people engaged. But what is actually happening is, why did I do this? I am really struggling, because when I finished my second doctorate, I made a very definite decision never to specialise again in the rest of my life. I was just going to be interested in absolutely everything. So, you know, when I did my first PhD, I was like some incredible delta function. I knew all there was to know about a very narrow topic. Now, I'm like a very thin sheet of ice on the ocean. I know nothing about an enormous amount.
And what did you teach?
What do I teach? I teach systems. So my title is Professor of Sentient Systems, and that's where I'm heading. But I basically teach systems, but I also, I've managed organizations So I was one of the founders of eBookers. I was the first funder into Shazam Entertainment. I built 30 companies. I run my own company. In BT, my budget responsibility was $5 billion, and I've managed 1,000 people.
Well, I asked because from the presentation, I would definitely say you have the mindset of a system engineer.
Yes, sure.
On that note, I think
is that why?
That's the highest compliment. I don't know if I'm ready to something to say. Okay, thank you, Pete.
Thank you. Please do.
We've got wine and sandwiches outside waiting for you.
No, only for me.
Yeah? You as well.
No, only for me.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.